All right, everybody's ready, correct? Yes. All right, we will go on the record in the matter 22FA64, in re the support or maintenance of Grayson Torres. Appearances are all by video conferencing Zoom with approval of the court. We have Hannah Royas, guardian ad litem. We have Kate Murtaugh and her client, Karuna Lee. We have Jonathan Torres, who is not represented. We're set today in this matter on an order to show cause and a hearing. We had, I believe it was an order to show cause hearing back on November 30th, 2023. Ms. Torres, or not Ms. Torres, Ms. Lee did not appear. Mr. Torres did appear, as did guardian ad litem Ms. Royas. And then at that time, based upon the guardian ad litem report to the court and the fact that Ms. Lee failed to appear, the court did issue a temporary order in this case. The court was informed that even though we had injunction hearings, which did have some serious issues presented at the injunction hearings, that Ms. Lee and Mr. Torres did reconcile, at least until the baby was approximately 3 or 4 months old, to the best of my recollection from the hearing. Again, that was on November 30th. And since that time, and the court ordered the temporary visitation schedule with Mr. Torres, we had information filed by the guardian ad litem with concerns, and we had then Ms. Lee hire and retain Ms. Murtaugh, and she has expressed other issues and concerns and would like to have a hearing with the court for the court to reconsider the temporary order that was entered. How do we want to begin? Where do we want to go? I believe, and I think, didn't Mr. Torres file a contempt or
he did, Judge.
Motion for contempt? Okay.
I believe sorry.
Go ahead.
I believe he filed an order to show cause, but has not had Ms. Lee served. I did speak with Attorney Royas earlier today about how we should proceed, or if the court asked for our opinion, what we would propose. And I guess given that Ms. Royas filed her request for an ex parte order, I think it makes sense to go forward on that. And Ms. Royas agrees. So if the court is okay with that, I think that that would be probably the way to go. But that's just my opinion.
That sounds like a good plan, especially considering Mr. Torres has not properly served Ms. Lee in his contempt matter, so that matter is not on the table today. Ms. Murtaugh, as counsel for Ms. Lee, you may call your first witness.
So Ms. Royas was going to go first on her motion, is what
right.
And I talked about. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. Your Honor, I would then call Mr. Jonathan Torres.
Mr. Torres, can you please raise your right hand? You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
You may begin.
Mr. Torres, can you please state your name and spell it for the record?
Jonathan Torres, Jonathan Torres.
And what is your current address?
106 Maple Street North, Turtle Lake, Wisconsin, 54889.
You are the father of Grayson M. Torres, who is the subject of this petition.
Yes.
What is her date of birth?
September 22nd, 2022.
How old does that make her today?
Roughly about a year and 5 months.
And you would agree with me that Grayson's mother is Miss Karuna G. Lee. Karuna.
Yes.
I very much apologize. Do you recall approximately when you met Miss Lee?
November 30th of 2021.
And during the course of your relationship with Miss Lee, were there ever any incidents of physical violence between the two of you?
Yes.
Can you recall how soon into the relationship those started?
It started around mid-December.
Do you recall an incident occurring in December of 2021 where police were summoned?
Yes, I do.
Can you describe what occurred that night?
Karuna had invited some of her friends over to her apartment for a little Christmas party. I was also there. During that time, she was drinking, and I had seen her kissing another man, so her and I started to argue. She ran into her room with her friend to talk about what was going on. After a while, her friends left. I tried to calm Karuna down. And during her and I talking, once her friends were gone, she started to yell, throw things. And during that time, she hit me in the foot with a cup, and she was getting real close to hitting her other daughter, Nevaeh. So that's when I grabbed her and held her down on the ground so she wouldn't harm herself, myself, or her Nevaeh. And during that time, she bit my hand. Once I let her go, she picked up a knife and told me to go away and back off. She locked herself in a room. I heard yelling and throwing inside of her room. That's when I called the police. I told them what was going on. They ordered me to break down the door. And that's when I saw lotion on her walls, her roof, and even on Nevaeh.
So during that incident, it's your testimony that Miss Lee was physically violent towards you.
Yes,
Were you violent in return?
only to defend myself and Nevaeh.
Across the course of your relationship, were there other instances of violence between the two of you?
Yes.
Were they frequent?
I would say they were kind of a month to a couple weeks apart from each other.
And during those events, were you violent towards Miss Lee?
I only laid my hands on her for self-defense.
Do you believe that you were controlling in your relationship with Miss Lee?
Yes,
Can you articulate how you exercised control over her?
I would tell her who she couldn't talk to, what clothes she could and could not wear.
Your Honor, I've pre-filed an exhibit in this case. If you have access to it, I'm wondering if you could pull it up.
I do not. I don't get access to pre-file, but the clerk did print them for me. Thank you. All right.
Your Honor, if I move to admit, are you able to have access to it then so that the parties are able to see it?
Yes, I believe I would, but I don't know how they would see it.
Would I be able to share my screen with the parties?
You sure can.
I believe that I have done that. Can anyone, or excuse me, Mr. Torres, can you identify whether you can see what I've shared on my screen?
Yes, I can.
Does this document look familiar to you? And I will scroll through so that you can review it in its entirety.
Yes, those texts look familiar.
Do you recall looking at this document with me when you met with me in my office?
Yes, I do.
Based on your review of the document at that time and what you can see on the screen, can you identify for the court what it is we're looking at?
No, we're looking at text messages that I sent Karuna.
And located on the top of the page is a phone number. Can you just identify whether that number does belong to you?
Yes, that's my personal phone number.
And would you agree with me that these are messages that you did send to Miss Lee and that they have not been, aside from highlighting, they have not been altered in any way?
No, they haven't been altered.
Your Honor, I would move to admit Exhibit 1.
Any objection, Mr. Torres or Ms. Murtaugh?
No objection. Your Honor.
Received.
Torres, on the first page that we're looking at now, there's a section that I have highlighted. Can you read that aloud?
See why I just want to fucking kill myself.
And the next one.
The only emotion you make me feel is suicidal.
And would you acknowledge that that was a threat that you would have made to Miss Lee during the course of your relationship with her?
Yes.
On this second page that I have now scrolled to, can you read what has been highlighted there?
I don't want to see you anymore because right now I just have the urge to beat the fuck out of you.
Mr. Torres, would you agree with me that that is an inappropriate way to speak to Miss Lee?
Yes, it is.
Would you agree that this is an example of messaging that you've provided to Miss Lee, but that this was something that occurred over the course of your relationship, not on one occasion?
Can you repeat that question again? I didn't understand it.
Yes, I'll rephrase. Mr. Lee, this is an example of a text message you did send to Miss Lee. Were there other text messages that were similar to this?
Yes.
And Mr. Lee, or Mr. Torres, excuse me, can you, when you're looking through this message, can you see the timestamps on the right-hand side of the page?
Yes, I can.
And would you identify that they appear to be in close succession to each other?
Yes, they are.
At the bottom of this page is a further section that I have highlighted. Could you read that out loud?
Do you see why I wanted you dead? Because you make me want to kill myself.
Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. Mr. Torres, do you recall during the course of your relationship with Miss Lee, any interactions that you might have had with the Burnett County Department of Health and Human Services?
I talked with one of their employees once before, Penny.
And did she ever identify to you that the department had opened a CPS case regarding Grayson?
No,
Not during any conversations with her.
I wasn't aware of any investigations until I got a letter that said I was found guilty of child neglect.
Do you recall approximately when you received that letter from the department?
I do not.
But you did receive a letter, and that letter said that you'd been substantiated for child neglect. Is that my understanding?
Yes,
And Mr. Torres, you reside in a home with your mother. Is that correct?
I do.
Who else resides in that house with you?
My brother, Emmanuel Torres.
Does your brother, Emmanuel Torres, have any significant criminal history?
He does, yes.
And do you recall what that is?
There was a case on a stabbing out of Barron County, and then another one with an ex-girlfriend out of Barron County as well.
Your Honor, I would ask you to take judicial notice of 3 Barron County cases. Those are the cases that Mr. Torres has just identified. The numbers are 19 CF 303, 19 CM 294, and 19 CF 368.
Or we'll take judicial notice of Barron County cases stated by Ms. Royas.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Torres, you would acknowledge that there was significant violence and control in your relationship with Ms. Lee. Is that correct?
Yes,
Have you sought any professional counseling or programming to help you deal with that?
yes, I was in contact with Carl Adder. He worked at the Cumberland Hospital for counseling. I was in contact with my old youth group leaders and my chaplain through the Army.
Thank you. Your Honor, I have no further questions for Mr. Torres.
Thank you. Ms. Murtaugh, do you have questions?
Yes. Mr. Torres, in the summer of 2022, you and Miss Lee were involved in a physical altercation, correct?
I don't recall.
Do you recall ever having a physical altercation with her while she was pregnant with Grayson?
No.
You have you've asked Miss Lee or told Miss Lee to send you pictures of the underwear she is wearing at a specific time, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And do you deny that you have choked her in the past?
Yes.
Do you deny that you've hit her?
No.
On how many occasions do you think you have hit Miss Lee?
There was the time in December with where I called the Siren Police Department. There was a case that happened in Alpha, Wisconsin, where I had to throw her off of me because she kept hitting my ear. There was a time that happened at my house. I don't recall the exact date, where she had scratched and punched my chest, so I pushed her away.
And is it your position that Miss Lee was the aggressor in all of these situations?
Physically, yes.
Okay. And what do you mean by yes, physically? Were you the aggressor in some other way?
My language wasn't quite the best. I would swear a lot of times at her and yell.
On December 10th, you met Miss Lee's stepmom and her dad, Miss Lee's dad, for an exchange of Grayson, correct?
Yes.
And you brought a gun to that exchange, did you not?
I open carry. Yes, I do.
Okay. You told Miss Lee that if she got extensions in her hair, that you would rip those out, didn't you?
I possibly did, yes.
I don't have any other questions.
All right, Mr. Torres, would you like to provide me with any type of information or testimony as it relates to this matter, this case, and what, and the motion filed by Ms. Royas?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Royas? Any other witnesses?
Call Karuna Lee.
Ms. Lee, please raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
All right, you may start.
Thank you. Ms. Lee, can you state your name and spell it for the record?
Karuna Lee, Karunalee.
Thank you. And you are the mother of Grayson M. Torres.
I am.
You heard Mr. Torres's testimony this afternoon, correct?
Correct.
Do you agree with him that your relationship began roughly in November of 2021?
Correct.
Do you agree with him that there was physical violence between the two of you as early as December of 2021?
That's the following month that I had met him, yes. Yeah, within 2 weeks.
How frequent during the course of your relationship was there violence between the two of you?
Almost every time we had seen each other, there was some kind of abuse, whether it was emotional or physical. Physical, maybe at a max, it would go by 2 weeks.
Do you agree with his assertion that you were the initiator of some of the violence between the two of you?
I disagree.
How quickly after you met Mr. Torres did you become pregnant with Grayson?
About a month and a half in, less than.
And so when you are just when you're describing instances of violence between the two of you, for much of that time period, you were pregnant. Is that correct?
Correct.
Can you recall specific instances of violence that occurred while you were pregnant with Grayson?
Yes.
Did Mr. Torres ever initiate violence towards you that you feared would harm Grayson?
Yes.
Do you believe that was his intent?
Yes.
After you had given birth to Grayson, were there instances of violence between the two of you where Grayson was present or even in between the two of you?
Yes.
Has Mr. Torres ever, during the course of your relationship, threatened you with firearms?
Yes.
Can you recall any specific instances and how he would do that?
How many incidents of the guns?
Yes.
All right. More times than I can count, honestly, at this point in time. I'd have to look back at my notes.
In January of 2023, was there a child support hearing involving the two of you?
Yes.
Did you have any communication with Mr. Torres regarding that hearing?
Yes.
Did he take any steps to try to change your position before that hearing?
Yes.
Can you describe what that was?
That if I did not ask the judge to cancel or drop the child support, that he would kill himself.
Did he provide you any evidence that he was serious about that threat to kill himself?
Yes, he would send me Snapchat pictures of him tying a sheet as a noose. He also sent me a picture of tubed up Tylenol in a cup, and he called me in the hospital. And while he was taking the medication too, as well, the Tylenol, he would call me, and every time I told him I wouldn't drop the child support, he'd take more.
Do you know whether he ever sought any treatment following that suicide threat?
I had gotten word about him talking to the chaplain, but nothing outside of that.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
All right, thank you. Ms. Murtaugh, questions?
Ms. Lee, in the summer of 2022, was there an incident where Mr. Torres choked you?
Yes.
And were you pregnant with Grayson at that point?
Yes.
Were there other incidents where he physically assaulted you?
Yes.
On how many occasions, if you can estimate, did he physically assault you?
While pregnant? Or just in general? Yeah, I can't count, but I mean, I could count a number of 16 times, but I mean, again, it happened almost every day that I would see him.
After Grayson was born, was there, did he assault you while he was holding Grayson?
Yes.
And at some point there was a protective plan in place through CPS, is that right?
Correct.
And was part of that based on Mr. Torres holding the child while assaulting you
Yes.
and preventing you from leaving the situation?
Yes.
I don't have any other questions.
Mr. Torres, do you have questions for Ms. Lee?
No, I do not.
You have no questions for her?
No.
All right, do you have any redirect, Ms. Royas?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, well, okay. Any other witnesses, Ms. Royas?
No, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Royas, argument?
Judge, I do have one witness.
Okay,
If that's okay. I would call Stacy Stelright.
Ms. Delright, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
You.
All right, Ms. Murtaugh, you may start questioning her.
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Stelright, how do you know Karuna Lee?
She's my stepdaughter.
And how long have you known her?
6.5 years.
And have you met Jonathan Torres?
I have.
And has there, in the summer of 2022, did you receive a call from Miss Lee that concerned you?
Yes.
Can you describe for the court what happened when you answered the, well, okay, let me back up. What time did you receive the phone call?
It was around 4 o'clock in the morning.
And can you describe Miss Lee's demeanor when you answered the phone?
She was crying hysterically.
Were you able to understand what she was saying?
No.
Was she attempting to tell you what was happening?
Yes.
And what did she say was happening at that time?
That John was attacking her, that he had cornered her and she was using a broken bottle to defend herself, that he had choked her.
And did you and Miss Lee's father go to her apartment after that?
He did. He left while I was on the phone call.
Okay. I don't have any other questions.
Ms. Royas,
Nothing further. Thank you.
no questions for Ms. Delright? All right, then, Mr. Torres, do you have questions for Ms. Delright?
Yes, I do.
Okay, you may begin.
So, Miss Delright, you say this phone call occurred in the summer of 2022.
I believe it was summer.
Whose apartment did she call you from?
Her own.
And the situation was that I was attacking her and cornered her, and she was using a bottle to defend herself.
That you had been doing that. Yes.
Was there any police presence when your husband came to pick her up?
Yes, they were already there.
Was she pregnant at the time?
Yes, she was.
Okay, no further questions.
Okay, any redirect, Ms. Royas? I mean,
No,
Ms.
thank you.
Murtaugh?
No, Judge.
Ms. Royas, based upon those questions?
No, Your Honor.
And Judge, before we have argument, I don't know if Miss Roy has moved for admission of her exhibit, but I would.
I think she did, and I think nobody objected, and I received it.
Okay, I apologize for that. Thank you.
All right, arguments, Ms. Royas.
Thank you, Your Honor. I am still requesting that the temporary order hearing be amended or changed. Specifically, what I'm recommending in this case is that all visits for Mr. Torres be supervised by his mother, Lynette Velez. I have spoken with her. She is willing and able to do that. She indicated she works every other weekend. This is a working weekend, so my recommendation would be to begin these visits on the 27th, Saturday. These would still be daytime visits from 9 to 5. Meeting point, I would recommend that we set a meeting point halfway, and that meeting point be in a public place, and that
With
Jonathan
Mom?
be.
With Grandma, not with Mr. Torres, because I'm just going to interrupt you right now because I'm well aware of all of the testimony from the injunctions, and I take judicial notice of that. And then it wasn't brought to my attention until the last hearing that they reconciled, and then there was no indication that there was further allegations of violence or abuse or anything serious. And this was even coming from you, Ms. Royas, that you had no apprehension at all with him seeing the child. And so, but now in hearing the additional stuff today, I have apprehension, I have concern. So I don't want to put parties in a situation that could cause something that I don't want to see happen. I don't want there to be any arguments. I don't want there to be any, I don't want to see anything like I see in these text messages. That's what I want to avoid. So what are you suggesting now? Meeting halfway point in a public place, but where do we go from there? Public place does not protect people.
Absolutely. My recommendation is that Mr. Torres's mother would be present for those child exchanges and that Miss Lee can have someone with her or designate someone else to bring the child to exchanges. I'm also recommending that the order ensure that Jonathan is unarmed at those visits and those child exchanges. I'm also recommending that Mr. Torres attend an anger management through a certified program certified by the Wisconsin Batterers Treatment Providers Association. I do have a list of those providers.
Well, you know, Ms. Royas, you are a guardian ad litem. You know, there's a significant difference between anger management and domestic violence, right? So programming would be extremely different and focus on different things. So are you asking for anger management or are you asking for domestic violence?
I am asking for domestic violence as would be certified through that organization.
All right. You have any suggestions or any place that you may have had in mind?
I do have a list of providers that are approved. I believe that one of the concerns would be insurance coverage, and so to some extent it may depend on Mr. Torres's insurance. I have worked with Advanced Behavioral Changes LLC. They do a program which I believe they also do that virtually. But I think there's a concern about insurance coverage, which maybe we cannot require a specific provider.
I do have a program here in Burnett where I have through my restorative justice programmer who does a 4-week program for domestic violence. Doesn't require insurance, may not be, it's not certified because he's not a certified therapist, but he's been working, he worked in probation for over 20 years, et cetera, and with restorative justice for, I believe, 3 to 5. I can't recall how long he's been there, but it does cost 80, I think it's either $100 or $150 for the program, and it is for a 4-week program. I think Mr. Torres can afford $150.
I can.
All right, next, Ms. Royas.
Your Honor, I would also be requesting a provision that Emmanuel Torres not have any unsupervised contact with Grayson. Aside from that, that is the summary of my recommendation. I believe that those recommendations are appropriate and in the best interest of Grayson. Obviously, I have serious concerns about the level of violence between these parties, about some of the comments that Mr. Torres has made to Ms. Lee during the course of their relationship, and I believe that that poses a safety risk to this minor child.
All right, thank you, Ms. Murtaugh.
Judge, so I'll just start out by saying Ms. Lee absolutely objects at this point in time to Mr. Torres having physical placement. He's not received any treatment.
Well, he wouldn't get physical placement. It would be visitation.
Okay. What's interesting to me is that Ms. Royas has recommended visits, supervised visits, but then at the very end of her recommendation, she said she has concerns about the safety of the child. And pursuant to 767.41, parent 4, parent B, a child is entitled to periods of physical placement with both parents unless, after a hearing, the court finds that physical placement with a parent
Again, we're not at physical placement time. That's not even applicable. There's
Okay.
concerns, but it's not even physical placement. We're not there yet.
Okay, but we do have evidence of domestic abuse, and we have evidence that the
On
child.
both sides, though, Ms. Murtaugh, because I did take judicial notice. I was there at those hearings. I heard back and forth. I heard everything, and I have just read all of these too, all of these text messages right now. So it's not just one or the other. Maybe one is more of the aggressor, but you may continue.
Well, if the court does find that one is more the aggressor, I do also think that is important. The safety of the
You have to
child.
prove that, though. Nothing has been proven to me yet which one is the most of the aggressor or which incident one was. So
Okay.
we're pretty much equal ground right now, but I have to look at the safety and the welfare of the child, and that's what I'm going to do.
And it's paramount. And so I think the court doesn't really need my argument. It sounds like we're good.
All right. Anything from you, Mr. Torres?
No, Your Honor.
Nothing? You don't want to argue anything on your own behalf here today? Anything that they're asking me to do?
If it's for the best of my child, I'm not going to argue with that because I want the best for my child as well.
All right. The court has serious concerns as to the safety and the well-being of this child. Safety and the well-being of Ms. Lee. Mr. Torres is he's in the military. He has access to weapons. He is very fit, very spry. He would be able to overtake Ms. Lee. And it's quite apparent. Can't see it now with her on Zoom, but I'm sure each of you have met her in person and you know she is a tiny little thing. She is small in stature. She is small in size. And she would not be able to hold herself against Mr. Torres. That is certain. But again, the focus here today is on Grayson and what the court needs to do to ensure that she is safe. Again, at the last hearing, on the November 30th hearing, I had no indication to believe that there was continued violence, that the parties have had reconciled shortly after those very devastating or hearings that had devastating information presented to the court. The court doesn't get to decide or determine what parties reconcile, what parties try and make a go of it, what parties try to stay together. So I did not get to determine that. I did not get to decide for the best interest of Grayson if they should continue to try to reconcile or not, but they are not together. It is quite clear. And this child was quite honestly put in the middle of violence. and severe violence, because we do have threatening of beating each other up, wishing or wanting to see people dead, and wanting to kill themselves and have suicidal attempts, or at least or insinuations. And in looking at these text messages, oh my God, this is absolutely no way to speak to the mother of your child. You don't go calling her a C word. You don't go calling and saying that you wish that, you know, she were dead, and then you would kill yourself. This is absolutely appalling to read these messages. It's appalling. And then I believe I'm reading these messages correctly, where on it's not labeled as 2 pages. I'd like to see that next time, Ms. Royas, if you're in a court, you please need to label the number of pages so the court can easily identify what I'm talking about. Then page 10. I think I'm looking at this right to say where he was trying to get a response from her, and he goes, fucking reply, damn it. Look at what you are fucking doing to me. All the bad shit with our relationship is because of you. Accept that, and accept is spelled wrong. That shit right fucking now. And then I'm seeing reply, 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 reply. All of those replies. He's asking, and it goes from 9:35 to 9:36. I think the times are cut off on some of these other ones. Unless I'm looking at this wrong, but it looks like he's asking for her to reply and responding and saying now, reply, 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 reply. That tells me that there is desperation there. When there is desperation there, serious things can happen. And it's scary. It's scary for Grayson. It's scary for Ms. Lee. It's scary for Mr. Torres. And it's scary for anyone in their wake. I don't know what to do. And then it goes on on page 11. No, yeah, on page 11, it does a little bit more replies, but just a few. Then on page 13, it has a whole page of replies, and page 14, a whole page of replies. And it goes at different times. So it leads me to believe that this is exactly what he's doing. Reply, reply. And his text to her was reply, 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 seconds after seconds after seconds. Again, extreme desperation. So I'm unsure if Mr. Torres has the ability to even control himself. And that is scary. And then weapons are involved. And at one time, there was an injunction, and the court did remove his ability to own or possess a firearm. But then that was asked to be withdrawn by Ms. Lee. The court can only protect people to the level and the ability that they allow the court to protect them. This child is a year, and I think he said a year and 5 months already. I believe the last time he saw Grayson, that he testified at the November 30th hearing, she was, I think, 4 months old, if I'm recalling correctly, something along that age. And so Grayson has no idea who Mr. Torres is. Grayson has no idea who the grandmother is. She has no connection with them at all. So that alone is going to be scary for Grayson. So what the court is going to do is I'm vacating my temporary order completely in its entirety. I'm going to issue a new temporary order. For the time being, this is January. For the time being, Mr. Torres can have supervised visitation with Grayson. His mother can have supervised visitation with Grayson, but it will be at a secure setting with professionals who will observe and will ensure that everybody's going to be safe, and that Grayson can get to know Mr. Torres and Grayson can get to know her grandmother before she's thrown in an environment that she has no clue and no familiarity with. And I'm not certain of where there is one in the vicinity. I believe Ms. Lee has moved out of the area. I believe Mr. Torres lives. I think he's in Barron County, the Turtle Lake part of Barron County. So I'm not even certain where there could be a facility or a place that could facilitate supervised visitation. So I'm going to ask the guardian ad litem to try and locate some facilities, please, that can accommodate. Unfortunately, that's going to come with a cost. But I have to look at Grayson, and I have to look at not only her physical well-being and safety, but her emotional well-being and safety. She deserves to know her dad just as much as she deserves to know her mom. The law doesn't say that just because the parents don't get along and they're violent with each other, that they're necessarily going to be violent with the child, but we do have to see. I do have to know that. I'm ordering a mental health evaluation for both Ms. Lee and for Mr. Torres. And again, I'm putting the onus on Ms. Royas to find facilitators to be able to do that, or to have the parties locate a facility and have approval of the court. But the mental health evaluation must occur no later than 45 days from today.
Your Honor, can I do my mental health evaluation through my current therapist that I have?
No, somebody totally different.
I have not started with her. I start with her on Thursday next
I
week.
want somebody totally separate from the facility that you will be engaging in therapy with. I want somebody independent and neutral.
Okay.
So within 45 days, I want to see a mental health evaluation. If that's unable to be secured, I want a letter to the court advising why. I would like to see the visitation start as soon as possible, but again, Ms. Royas needs to locate facilities and get that information to the parties, because there is going to be a cost. There's going to be travel involved for both, because I believe Ms. Lee now resides in Minnesota somewhere. But I would like to see visitation 1 time a week at minimum for now. And I want also Mr. Torres to participate and successfully complete a parent education class. And that can be with the Birth to 3, the Family Resource Center. But Ms. Royas, you can locate one too and provide assistance to Mr. Torres at where there are some available for him to go. That must be in person. The court is also going to order that Mr. Torres engage, and Ms. Lee too. We're going to have both of you engage in this, because even though both of you you both have been victims to some degree, but you both have been perpetrators to other degrees as well. And it would serve both purposes for both of you to look at domestic violence and what it is, and the impact on the victim, as well as the impact on the children as well. So you both must engage in a domestic violence program. And again, that can be, and Ms. Lee, I'm fine if they have a program at your therapist with the domestic violence program and you want to complete that one, I'm fine with that. Or you both can do the restorative justice with Dave Hatch here. But that's going to need to be at least signed up for within the next 45 days as well. After we have all of these things completed, we can have another hearing in which the court can get an update, and we can look at the recommendations from these programs. And then we can see from there where we're going to go with regards to further visitation, and whether or not we can move from the institutional setting at a facility to perhaps Mr. Torres's mother's home with grandmother as supervisor. But at this juncture, I need to look at what's in the best interest of the child. And she is so young, and she has not had a relationship with any of the Torres family for at least a year.
Your Honor,
Go ahead, Ms. Lee.
who is welcome at those supervised visits on the Torres side of the family?
Well, it's just going to be Mr. Torres and his mother. I don't know, and he has a father too, I believe. I haven't heard any concerns with the father. The grandfather can go too, but the brother will be prohibited from attending.
Thank you.
Am I missing anything, Ms. Royas, at least at this juncture?
Don't believe so. Thank you, Your Honor.
Ms. Murtaugh, from your point of view?
So I think the court has made it clear, but so the court's granting Ms. Lee physical placement and sole legal custody, I'm assuming.
Well, that's what the law says right now. I don't think I even need to put that in an order right now.
Okay.
It is what it is.
Okay.
Mr. Torres, from your perspective, is the court missing anything? Do you want me to address anything else?
No, Your Honor.
And obviously, I shouldn't have to even say it, but at the visits, and obviously when you go to do any of the programming, you must go unarmed. Shouldn't have to say that, but no concealed weapons.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, anything further before we adjourn here today?
So I heard what the court said about feeling like that shouldn't have to be in an order about the sole legal custody and physical placement. I'm just concerned that if there is a situation and law enforcement becomes involved or something happens, that it will need to be spelled out in the order just to protect the child.
Well, I don't think it does, Ms. Murtaugh.
Okay.
And this hearing is not for that. This is an ex parte order hearing for the court to address its
Absolutely.
temporary hearing, and I vacated that. And so the backup is always the law. Unmarried women give birth, have all the rights.
Yes. You and I know that, but sometimes I don't know that law enforcement knows that. So.
Well, hopefully we're not gonna have issues. If we do, that's something that we can easily get on the court's calendar and we can address. All
sounds
right, Ms. Royas, are you gonna draft the order?
And yes, Your Honor.